Hey, good afternoon. Okay, good afternoon. I'm very pleased to introduce you to Linh, our fourth speaker in this fall in Tabula poetry at Chapman University. I want to take a moment to express appreciation for Professor Anna Leahy and Logan Estelle at the back, who have been instrumental in making it possible to have him here with us. The Department of English for the support of this speaker series, and Poetry and Writers Incorporated for aiding us with a grant issued through the James Irvine Foundation. A recipient of the Pew Foundation grant, the David T. Wong Fellowship, and the Asian American Literary Award, Linh has worked in a wide variety of literary forms, engaging with language as writer, editor, and translator. He has written 2 short story collections, Fake House and Blood and Soap, the novel Love Like Hate, and 5 books of poems, all around what empties out: American Tats, Borderless Bodies, Jam Alerts, and the most recent work, Some Kind of Cheese Orgy, an excerpt of which was featured in Harper's this past month. Blood and Soap was chosen by The Village Voice as one of the best books of 2004. His work has been anthologized in Best American Poetry 2000, Best American Poetry 2004, Great American Prose Poems from Poet of the Present, and Watermark Vietnamese Poetry and Prose, among other places. He's also the editor of the anthologies 3 Vietnamese Poets and Night Again, Contemporary Fiction from Vietnam. He is the translator of Nightfish and Charlie Parker, the poetry of Fan Yen Hao. Jessica Hagedorn has at one point commented that Linh writes with the raging wit and soul in the soul of a poet. The point of emphasis is not raging or wit, but the collision of both. At once shocking and hilarious, his writing often contains images that prompt visceral responses and has the forceful ability to defamiliarize reality in a way that reminds me of the way that Walter Benjamin described Brecht's epic theater, with the emphasis on the process of interruption that produces astonishment rather than empathy. And this is the idea that instead of having the audience identify with the characters, the playwright should educate the audience to be astonished about the circumstances under which the characters are operating. Yet it isn't all just some kind of updated Brechtian alienation, as I also find poet Susan Schultz's assessment of his poetry convincing as well. And this is a quote: "As I read Linh, I see manifestations of disgust in this poetry as paradoxical expressions of suffering, violence, poverty, degradation, and an odd empathy for those caught up in it. When the reader encounters an image that disgusts her, disgust becomes more than a childlike reaction for feces or vomit or blood, more an odd expression of empathy with one who suffers." So empathy, no empathy, or an odd expression of empathy. A consistently remarkable quality of his writing, though, is the ability to draw us into the unflinching gaze at the often disturbing and brutal conditions of life that just is. So we're very lucky to have him with us today. The title of his talk is Poetry During Collapse. Please join me in extending a heartfelt welcome to Linh.
Thank you, Ray, for the introduction, and thank you, Logan, for inviting me here. And I'm very happy to see you all. I usually don't talk with notes. I just wing it, and then hopefully, your responses will contribute to this discussion. I must say, I've always have been very ambivalent about being a writer. I've always wanted to be some kind of an artist and a writer. But I quit school early. I never finished college, and I found myself having many odd jobs, jobs that made me very uncomfortable. But so I've always been like a sort of an intellectual and yet a very working class person. And one of my favorite quotations is from Jasper Johns, who said that the artist is the aristocrat of the working class, so of the servant class, not the ruler, servant class, which is something I quote in the Harper's poem recently. So anyway, I think the natural human impulse, is to gravitate towards power, money, beauty, attraction, you know what I'm saying? And for some reason, I felt that the job of the artist is to go the other way, which is almost, unnatural, You should gravitate towards ugliness, desperation, squalor, stench, whatever, you know what I'm saying? Things that make you uncomfortable, because ultimately, that's our final destiny, you know what I'm saying? I come from a country which is in pretty bad shape, so I've been back to Vietnam 3 times, the last time for 2.5 years and as an adult, and there's just so much desperation there that you have to come to terms with it. You have to reconcile yourself to it, and you have to address it as a writer. And I'm saying Vietnam is a kind of a salient example, but I would say the United States has plenty of those qualities too, if only we would pay attention, And I have a fascination about collapse because I think it's a kind of an allegory, because let's say, okay, I'm really uncomfortable with the notion of glamour as something, super seductive, and I think we're so subscribe to that in this culture. This culture is all about glamour, especially here in Southern California, right? And it's fine if we can all stay there, Hey, I wouldn't mind being glamorous for the rest of my life either, but I don't think we allow that option, And I don't think most people allow that option, even now, They never get there. So the discrepancy between this. The cool look, the cool way of walking and driving and all, and how life really is, that tension is unsustainable, which is really unsustainable, and it's immoral, I think, So, like most people cannot participate in this little, little stage play that we're putting on, okay? And I think the United States is going, the last 4 years I've been teaching a course called State of the Union. I taught it in Naropa in Colorado, University of Montana, and UPenn. So 3 very different universities. UPenn is like $56,000 a year, So that's, I don't know, I can live for so long on that. So, and University of Montana is more like working class kids, farm kids or whatever, Also they have some privileged kids too. But I've been teaching this course because I think we're going through a collapse. I think finally we're going to hit reality, this country, because we shouldn't be this rich, we're in debt, we broke, we seriously broke, and whether we like it or not, we have to come to terms with some other reality, and I don't think most people, because the media is not. Doesn't want to confront this issue, because every time you turn on the media, their job is to sell you junk, sell you whatever. So they have to seduce you constantly. So they're not going to say, hey, you're going to run out of money soon, and you're not going to buy anything, So so anyway, so I've been teaching this course, and at first there were, surprisingly, most of my students sort of got it. They were like, they didn't say, hey, you're talking nonsense or something. So, they came from all like different backgrounds. So, basically, to make a long story short, okay, I live in Pennsylvania. I live in Philadelphia. Pennsylvania was the first oil boom in the United States. Oil was made it big in Philadelphia, in Pennsylvania. The first major oil well in Pennsylvania was called Empire, interestingly enough. Okay, Pennsylvania is a big coal state. It was a big steel state. All those industries are gone. Bethlehem Steel, which is like an hour away from where I am, used to produce the steel for half the skyscrapers in New York City. It's shut down. The steel from Golden Gate Bridge comes from Bethlehem steel. I'm just giving you an example of that one village, one city, because that city doesn't make anything anymore. Billy Joel, right, has a song called Allentown. It's really about Bethlehem, because he didn't want to confuse like the Christmas, Bethlehem, so it's called Allentown. But it's really so when you go to Bethlehem, and there's two things, okay? There's education, right? Okay. Which is fine. Hey, I love education too, but we can't just go on teaching each other stuff, we got to make stuff, so. And there's the casino, which is open. So basically we reduce it that, once we don't know what to make, we hustle each other, hey, let's. So Bethlehem is a casino town and a college town. But that's not productive. But that's the whole country. That's the whole country. Philadelphia doesn't make anything either. I used to work in a t-shirt factory. There's no garment industry back in Philadelphia anymore. So anyway, okay. So if you can sort of tentatively say we're in this predicament where we don't make anything, but look, we still expect stuff, right? Look, how much that's in your house is made in USA? Seriously, very little. So how do we pay for this stuff? We don't. We give people funny money, right? And then they have so much of it, they reinvest it into our bonds. I was told by Logan that this school, there's a lot of business majors here, right? You guys know money more than I do, okay? Okay, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. We don't make anything, we expect stuff to come to us, we get into such serious debt, and we expect this system to go on, and it's just not going to go on. So we're not in a recession. I think we're in a depression. Okay. Recently, I was asked to write an article for the New York Times, and they want to give it like a positive spin on all this. Like it's okay. You're going to have less, you're going to eat less, but you're going to feel good anyway. And I felt pretty stupid about it, but I couldn't say no. Because a part of me said, hey, it's like I never get into a place like that. I write in these stupid journals that no one reads, right? So New York Times, I'm saying. Shit, I can't say no. I got to write for them. But I try to squeeze in certain kind of political commentaries. They edit it all out, because, they don't want to hear that stuff. So, in a sense, I felt like a whore, and I was a whore. Because that's what their job is, to deflect attention away from what's really wrong with this country. You know what I'm saying? So, because they are the people who got us into this predicament. The investors, the people who own the New York Times, who own all the companies, they're all the same people, really. So, what I'm saying? They don't want us to wake up to anything. So, anyway, I was supposed to write a second article for them, and they just ignore me. So, but I felt like I got something out of it. I felt like, okay, if people, like something I say, they can look for what I'm really doing. Okay. So, speaking about gravitating towards the unsavory, the ugly, et cetera, et cetera. I've been doing this project called State of the Union, in which I've been trying to photograph. I started as a visual artist anyway. I started as a painter. So I've been traveling the country, trying to photograph. Before we go on, and there are so many things to discuss, and Logan, you're going to remind me of some of the issues you raised earlier, right? We got a little heated, didn't we? So, okay, before we go on, I just want to introduce you to some of those. There are 10 cities. I'm sure there are 10 cities in Los Angeles, right? There must be a few, right? Sure? No? Okay. So there's a 10th city near Philadelphia, in Camden. Camden was the home of Campbell Soup and RCA Victor. Okay. In a sense, the lesson of Camden is instructive too, because you have canned food and canned music, which is like, in a sense, we don't get anything direct in this country. It's always, and I have a very unusual antipathy towards the automobile. I'm 45. I've owned 2 cars in my life for the total of less than 2 years. I just don't drive, And I know coming into Southern California with the freeways, every time I come here, and this is not the first time, I go to California fairly frequently. I'm always amazed. I just can't believe you guys are living like this. This is just insane, I think there's something about that kind of alienation, about not dealing with the environment, with your body. And I must say that on a college campus, you get a kind of reprieve. because this is, this is like a kind of a little village here. You know what I'm saying? But it's a kind of a fake village. It's not really an economic. It's not sustainable as in, you guys are not making anything, not selling anything. You're paying serious money to be in this little village, right? But it's sane here in the sense that you are allowed to engage each other body to body, okay? And I'm only pointing that out because I don't think the automobile and the vast freeway network is how people are supposed to live. I'm sure most of you must have traveled to other countries, right? I mean, people don't live like this anywhere else, Okay, we are 6% of the population globally. We spent 25% of the oil and everything else. We just consume so much, and because the way our cities are laid out, it's not sustainable. Not sustainable. They got suburbs like way inland now, right? People are driving 2-3 hours to come to LA to work. It's insane. It's insane. Okay. Before I get to the tent city, I want to say something else. It's like I think it's important for a writer to try to identify the most urgent issues, or just a citizen. Forget writer. How many of us are really writers? Okay. As a citizen, we should identify the most urgent issues that affect our times. Okay. It's because then nothing else makes sense. Try to see as comprehensively as possible. You know what I'm saying? Okay, so I know right in California you have this immigration issue, right? Mexicans coming in, South Americans, Central Americans. And it's serious stuff. It's serious stuff. But you have to see deeper into it. It's not like, okay, we're so great, they got to come here. No, you got to know about NAFTA. You got to know about the subsidized corn we dump on them. You know what I'm saying? You got to know about all the factories along the borders. You got to look into this. It's all related. You know what I'm saying? And nothing is like an accident. You know what I'm saying? Nothing is an accident. It's all like, they want it that way. The housing boom. I used to paint houses, I used to paint houses. But what I was charging was too much for what they want because they could make more profit hiring the Mexicans. Seriously, I'm giving you straight. I cannot paint, I will never get a house painting job again because I cannot work as fast as cheaply. Simply put. So cheap labor is part of the equation, The last boom we had was the housing boom, you know what I'm saying? So it's all, you just drive down to Tijuana and just go over there, just see what's happening, look into it. So anyway, try to see as comprehensively as possible, and then some things start to make sense. Okay, one more thing about being a writer. And in Vietnam, I returned to live for 2.5 years in '99. And the more successful writers were the ones who dodged the issues. Because the government doesn't want you to identify the issues that will enrage people, that will piss people to fuck off. You know what I'm saying? They can't afford that. And they don't want it here either. They don't want that here either. They want to put you to sleep, So in Vietnam, the prostitution's all over the streets. You cannot write about prostitutions. The corruption's everywhere. From the street cop, you got to pay your kindergarten teacher if you want your kid to have a good grade. You know what I'm saying? You cannot mention corruption. So anyway, these writers make a career out of not talking about anything that matter. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just saying we don't have that sort of really heavy-handed kind of harassment here, but it's happening here too. It's happening here too. That's why I was talking to Logan. That's why no one reads the poems we write, because most of it is nonsense. It doesn't talk about anything. It talks about everything so petty. You know what I'm saying? So trivial, or it's incomprehensible. So I'm in that ghetto. I'm in the poetry ghetto, and I feel as disgusted inside as you feel looking at it from. You're not even looking at it. You know what I'm saying? It's not even on your radar. So anyway, I'm going to show some slides from the tent city. I'm going to track this development. This is in Camden. Okay, so the first slide is Camden Tent City, and the guy on the right is Lorenzo Jamaica Banks. He's the head of this Camden Tent City. It's about 67 people there right now. There's a waiting list. There's black, white, Hispanics, etc. No kids. That's the only thing they don't allow because it's too complicated. There's a lot of couples. Okay, Jamaica was a Vietnam vet. He immigrated from Jamaica. His name is Lorenzo. And he was sent to jail for murder, And when he got out, he tried to commit suicide by jumping off the Ben Franklin Bridge, and the cop who tried to save him got paralyzed because they hit the water together. So anyway, but he's keeping this tent city together. Okay. That's not his wife, by the way. That's just one of the residents there. Okay, that's Rex on the left. He's the oldest guy there. He's 76. And that's Tina McGinnis on the right. She's 19. She's the youngest one there. She's already been there like 8 months. Now, I come and, it's like I'm not trying to pretend these people are saints or anything, I know some of them are bullshitters, So it's like, Tina told me she was Miss New Jersey, right? I said, yeah, right, yeah. So I said, what year? She said 2007. So I went home, Google. There's no Tina McGinnis in 2007. Now, my engagement with them is multi-layer. I think a part of me is just fascinated by how people manage to function and work together when everything else fails, because they really have to learn how to function with each other. Having said that, almost every time I show up, there's a fight. People get pissed off because it's uncomfortable, But they have a system to, they know how to coexist. And this notion of squalor, too, is interesting to me because it's the opposite of glamour. It's everything we don't expect to find here. It's not like they like it. They just have to deal with it, That's Jay. Jay's 32. This guy has no excuse. He inherited $250,000 when he's 26 and just wasted it all on drugs. So his habit is down to $20 a day, which is pretty good for him. Interestingly, his girlfriend is still with him. I mean, she was with him when he had a house and 2 cars and $250,000, and she's still with him when he's in the tent. One thing is, they have one television, and it has of course there's no cable, right, in the middle of this thing. So they watch videos, but otherwise they just talk. There's nothing to do but talk and argue. What I'm saying? So, but the conversation aspect is interesting to me. I mean, they literally have to deal with each other on a very physical level because they have no choice. With her, I couldn't get her to open her mouth. I said, you gotta laugh. And she said, no, I have horrible teeth. Actually, she has hardly any teeth left. But I told her, hey, I have bad teeth too. Why don't you just laugh? It took a bit of coaxing for her to laugh. But it's really what it comes down to is class issues. You can tell someone's background by just looking at their teeth, probably, without even asking a question. Notice a little pumpkin. That's the one bathroom for everyone. That's a honey bucket, right? I guess you can call it that. I mean, there would be nothing if this is some weird aberration, but there are 10 cities all over the country now. And there's going to be more of these, and it's going to be more crowded, okay? I mean, some of these people have been lifelong kind of troublemakers, but a lot of them are not. There are a lot of people with skills who had jobs recently. I met a guy who laid tiles, a dock worker, etc., etc. These are regular people in here, okay? Okay, so I'm going to finish my part by reading the poem that was in Harper's. It deals with class issues, and then we open up for discussion. Okay, how's that? This poem is called Clean, Clean, Clean. Belonging to the lower class, you expected to cater to the upper class's lower bodily functions. Not to engage their minds, but to wipe their asses. Kiss their cunts on demand, suck cocks for tips. Unless, of course, you're an artist, in which case, you're an aristocrat of the servant class, to quote that grand maestro among slaves, Jasper Johns. I used to clean apartments and houses. Shown up for a new job, I was greeted by the mistress. I have the most respect for new immigrants. You work so hard. Down low, you get a disproportionate lowdown on all things funky and nasty. Nothing unusual, really, just shit and stuff. I cleaned toilets and fridges, folded panties, got on all fours, dipped into the suspicious. A young woman confided, I moved to Philly because California women were so beautiful. She was usually home when I came, the spine of her soft porn book turned to the wall. They all had some smut in the house. This was before the internet made these sad and surreptitious purchases unnecessary. I found a teenage Madonna in a closet, so I knelt and sighed. A fat one lived alone, but once she said, sorry, the house is so messy today. I had company last night, and her face brightened angelically. Okay, now we just open up for discussion. Okay. Yes.
Could you touch a little bit more on what you meant by glamour being immoral?
Can you also repeat the question so it goes on the video?
Yeah, the question was why glamour is immoral. Because it's a kind of it's a kind of a flaunt. You know what I'm saying? It's because it's so at odds with how real life is lived. You know, I know that's immoral is such a heavy word. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. But you know what I'm saying? I mean, it's such an outrage to people who cannot participate in it, to see it all the time, and we see it all the time. We see it, you know, internet, billboards, photos, and you know, part of my photo project is that I want to present unglamorous images, because photo is used primarily to peddle, you know, glamorous images. I know immoral is a funny word, you know. I don't want to sound like I'm that dogmatic, you know what I'm saying? So, but it's an affront to our dignity to be, you know, to be bombarded by these images about some, you know, some other life. You know what I'm saying? While we're being degraded, you know what I'm saying? That's all. Okay. But yeah, I'm not 100% sure I should have used that exact word. Okay. Yes. Yes.
How bad do you think things will have to get before people sort of realize what's going on?
Well, I think it's going to get bad soon enough. So I think they should wake up. I think, you know, getting back to the layout, the physical layout of our towns and cities, I think that's where we went wrong primarily. You know what I'm saying? Not only is it inefficient to live this way, we have no chance to okay, there's no public spaces. There's no places to loiter in America, you know. In Spain, in Italy, you have the piazza, the plaza, right? Most culture allow for the common, you know, common space where you just hang out, you know. Here, well, here's the mall. Yeah. Here's the mall. Yeah, right. You know. In Italy they have the passeggiata before dinner. You just go out and you hang out for like 2 hours. The kids, the little kids, the old men, the old women, the teenagers, they just walk around. They look at the same people every day. They don't get bored, you know what I'm saying? We don't have that. We do not have. I think, we sit and stare at the television, So the physical layouts of our cities and towns are all screwed up, and we have to do something about that, I think. So, yes. Anyone? It's funny because like the new Americans, like the ones who are barely Americans, those neighborhoods are the most lively. You go there and it's crazy, right? The real Americans, hey, get away from me, man, right? So, and you get on the bus, public transportation is all, non-Americans, you know what I'm saying? Because they haven't been assimilated to this alien nation, you know what I'm saying? Yes.
Are there any instances of a culture like drastically reconfiguring their structure the way we would have to?
I don't know.
We just have to start over.
Yeah, I know. So hey, the way you phrase that, I think you're getting it. I spent 9 months in England, and we got a lot of our bad ideas from England, But even they're not as bad as us. We're worse, The English house is like behind like this hedge, you can't see in the window. You know what I'm saying? It's just, you can't see the privacy. But they have the pub. You go to the pub, you see kids running, you see your couch. You know what I'm saying? They still have some notion of community. We do not. So, yes, you were saying something.
I was just going to ask if you thought that applied mostly to big cities or also to small town America?
It's everywhere. I taught in Missoula, Montana for 4 months, and it's also the sprawl. Okay? It used to be you have you still have the center, but the center, I think people are moving back in because there is a kind of dissatisfaction with living on the, nowhere. There's a book by James Howard Kunstler called The Geography of Nowhere. He dissects the American suburbs. It's highly recommended. Kunstler is a very good commentator about our physical layouts. So it's bad everywhere. I was just in Texas, I've spent some time in Texas, and, the original Texas town was kind of nice, the courthouse, whatever. The automobile allowed people to just move, just do their own thing. And so think about all of the real estate wasted for the automobile, not just because of the size of our roads and streets, parking spaces, parking garages. You know what I'm saying? I mean, more of this country is constructed to accommodate the automobile than the human body. Think about it. You know what I'm saying? So, yes.
Curious about your ideas that, when you were saying like glamour being immoral, or if not immoral, then kind of just, I don't know, like this facade for other people who don't have things that we project or whatever in the country. But at the same time, isn't it that kind of front of glamour that attracts people to this country in the first place?
Sure.
I mean, my grandparents were like immigrants. And there's almost everyone who is an immigrant, it seems, they're coming because of that, possibility of attaining beauty and riches and fame and everything. So, like, how can you say it's a bad thing when it's still possible, or
It is possible and no, because the entire world cannot live like us. You know what I'm saying? If everyone has a 2-car garage and this whatever, how many bedroom house, the world is just not big enough to accommodate that kind of appetite. You know what I'm saying? And like I said, we're 6% of the population, and we consume 25% of the resources. It's just, and this globe is already maxing out. We can't. You know what I'm saying? So that image is cool if there's infinite resources. You know what I'm saying? Seriously, I wouldn't mind it too. I wouldn't mind having a huge house and, but it's just not possible. And it's funny, like the American model is really very seductive. You have suburbs in China and Vietnam with names like, Beverly Hills and, seriously. It's very seductive. And California is the most seductive one. This is the model. You know, when people think of the United States and they want to dream the United States, they don't think of Philadelphia. They think of, Southern California. They don't think of Camden, New Jersey. You know what I'm saying? So, no, I agree with you. I mean, if it was possible to accommodate everyone who wanted this.
Accommodate everybody, but maybe the people who really want it.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying? It's like, how can you justify consuming so much? You know what I'm saying? And like this state itself is going bankrupt. You know what I'm saying? We're running out of everything. Water. We're running out of water. You know what I'm saying? The earth just cannot do this for us. That's all. I agree, but I agree. You know that ambition. I think you're trying to point out the sense of ambition, right? Are you willing to work for this?
That's like what people produce.
Yeah, yeah. And we're very productive. We work like crazy. We're very productive. We are. Seriously. Okay. Yes.
If you agree with the statement that artists are the aristocracy of like lower classes or working classes, would you also say that implies that there's sort of an inappropriateness for economic aristocracy to be artists if their means of conveyance is maintaining a status quo?
Yeah, that is a huge contradiction. And some of my artist friends are rich, and there's no, I mean, that doesn't mean that they shouldn't become artists, right? Okay, every few years I seem to get a grant from this guy, Patrick Lannon, of the Lannon Foundation. He's loaded, but he gives me some money, right? And I think his heart is in the right place. You know what I'm saying? So, although he's not an artist, technically, he's all for the arts. You know what I'm saying? And there's been many examples of that, like New Direction, the publishing house, is a rich guy. And so my publisher, Dan Simon, 7 Stories Press, is a rich guy. So it's a weird,
So they should operate more as like beneficiaries and producers, but they shouldn't be artists themselves?
No, if they have the ability, do it themselves. Okay, here's another way to put it. As an artist, you can never have enough money, in a way. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying for myself, but I'm just saying anyone, because you don't know what you might want to do. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I mean, you shouldn't apologize if you have so much money. Just use it right, I think. Does that make sense? So, I mean, it's fluke. It's a fluke if you had $1 billion or if you had no money, right? So, it's where your heart is, Yeah. Anyone else?
But there's in the conversation some insinuation that it isn't a fluke, that if you work hard, you'll get the money. That's in the conversation. That,
Yeah.
You know that idea that you deserve it, that somehow you worked hard. That's here in the room.
Or maybe, let's say if your dad was a crook, he's got all the money, right? You shouldn't apologize for that either, because, what I'm saying, like, however you come into the money, the cash.
There's that, I'm just asking that we trouble that a bit, that indeed it is a fluke.
Right.
If you have nothing, or if you have millions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where you're born in the world. It depends
Yeah.
on a lot of things. And so that idea, well, if you want it, you're going to work for it and get it. Well, that's if you're already tremendously privileged.
Right.
On a global.
Sure. And we are, as a country, tremendously privileged. The fact that we have,
Around the idea, well, we worked hard for it, so we deserve the glamour.
we don't deserve anything.
We worked hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's important that we trouble that here in seductive California.
Yeah. Okay, I think the more important point I'm trying to make here is the contents of your work. You know what I'm saying? It's where you position yourself mentally. You know what I'm saying? Let's say you're so rich and, you're eating out in a good restaurant every night and you're just traveling. You're going to Venice next week or something. You know what I'm saying? I think you gotta put your mind in a place that matters. You have to see the people who don't have access to this. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, but
And write
them really.
and see them really.
And not that they're less than you because you have more.
Yeah, and not just like wave at them as you pass them, but like try to You know what I'm saying? Like right from the premise that life is a very desperate endeavor, okay? And that's when you might get to somewhere. You know what I'm saying? But so much of art and so much of writing isn't created out of that sense of awareness. So much of it is really nothing. But that's the stuff that fills the museums. That's the stuff that gets into the anthologies, etc. So, yes.
Would you say, though, if we are that privileged society, especially in this location, that we have an obligation to assist other less privileged artists to better themselves and give our money in various ways to assist maybe less fortunate artists? Or do we have the right to keep it all for ourselves? Like, I mean, which...
It's a personal thing. I'm not going to say anything funny about that. But I think, like, getting back to the, where your mind is, where your thinking is, that's the most important thing, And I've seen examples of artists who have, not affluent people who have helped. So it's, but it's a personal thing. It's a really personal thing. Because you can be a selfish son of a bitch with no money, you know what I'm saying? You can be so stingy too. Right? So it's not a question of like how much you gave or something, So, yeah. I know, it's easy, talk is cheap, right? I mean, so, yeah, I don't want to say anything stupid, Yeah. Yes, Logan?
When you spend time with people and you meet them and you hear their stories and so on, do you use them in your work? And do you ever feel like it's inappropriate to do so?
Yeah, I mean, I do feel sometimes like, maybe I'm another vulture, I'm just preying on them, But, yeah, it's something that I wonder too. But I think every writer, every artist, you like that, You're always kind of exploiting the situation. You know what I'm saying? Whether you're talking to a bum or you're talking to a rich guy, you're not really there. You're not really his friend. So it's a little funny that way.
I mean, not to get too crazy about it, you can start to think you're exploiting yourself as an artist, right? You've made your life into your work and you do things in order to write a poem.
Yeah. And frankly, look, if we really exploiting people, then we're not getting a whole lot for it. You know what I'm saying? We're getting nothing. Seriously. As a poet, if you're really greedy, this is the last thing you want to do. You got to be insane. No, seriously. Who wants to, seriously, poetry is the last thing you want to do if you have any kind of greed in you. Just look at all the angry, bitter poets out there, But then again, I mean, if you're really a poet, if that's in you, then you don't question, you don't pose that question. You just do it because you gotta do it. You gotta do it. Yes.
And following with that, though, wouldn't it probably then be more appropriate to, like with her saying, helping people out with their art, maybe like rather than putting it to your own art, right, asking them to give their more authentic view of it? Or should you just count on the fact that you should be the one to take the story despite the fact that there's a separation?
Well, these guys can't write. They're not going to write anything. You got to write, I mean, because you're the writer. I'm not saying they're stupid or anything, but they're not writers. You know what I'm saying? You can talk to a banker. He's not a writer either. You're the writer. You know what I'm saying? 'Cause that's just, that's just what you happen to, that's just your ability. You know what I'm saying? So. And like I say, it's not like it's all like, okay, you decide to write and it's gonna happen. Because much of writing is futile anyway, Either you write it so badly, or no one reads it, or whatever, Much of it goes nowhere anyway. So you don't have to worry about like exploiting anyone because it's going to be thrown into the trash can, So yes. Anyone? Yes.
What do you think that photography allows you to do that writing has a limit for, or vice versa? Like, what is writing?
Because I was trained as a visual artist, so this is not that unnatural to me. But also, I realized I was spending too much time in front of the computer, And this is something that always annoyed me, like this sort of mediator. The automobile is a mediator, you know. The windshield is like kind of a screen. We're always in front of a screen, you know. So when I was a house painter, at least I was in people's homes. I was mixing with people. So this project is a way for me to use my body. I mean, I walked for 8 miles. I mean, I got up at 5 this morning, Logan. I was in MacArthur Park. I was in Santa Monica. Yes. So, but it's a way for me to, employ my, to engage my environment, but in a very physical way. This is a way for me to cure myself because I was just in front of the computer too much. So.
Well, you said that in your talk you were trying to, that photography is often used in order to not just document but create the notion of a glamorous world, and that you were going to undermine that if you could in whatever modest way. Writing maybe doesn't glamorize so much. Is that sort of this distinction between the two media? So, there's no more immediate effect when you pursue an unglamorous photograph. But you're also trying to do an unglamorous kind of thing with writing as well, because you feel that writing glamorizes?
Less so. Less so. We're surrounded by images, that's the primary tool with which they seduce us. That sounds so bad. And yet we don't know how to talk. We don't know how to dissect images. My project, I have no text. I don't want to say this Camden. I just give you the images, So because I don't want to, because most people look at the text and they think they got it and then they move on. So, yes.
I think the idea of your work as Brechtian is interesting, and I was just wondering how you react to that definition of your work. Because it sounds like you want to engage at the same time that people may read that you're alienating. Do you feel that's fair?
Okay. Germany during World War I, World War II was a very unusual time, right? And this is, I think the artists of that time, the writers and the artists of that time really rose to the challenge of, that society in upheaval, right? A lot of just madness and things, what I'm saying? So yeah, for me, that period is very inspiring as far as identifying the issues and creating work that have lasted to this day. So I think we're going through the same kind of upheaval and madness, and it would be interesting to see what kind of work comes out of this period. That's all. It's just amazing to me. Okay, I'm not going to say this because I'm about to mention a poet who's kind of well known, but I'm going to try to talk in a roundabout way so you don't know who I'm talking about. Okay. There's a poet I respect very much. Okay, he's very central to me. He's helped me out a lot, right? Doing the bailout thing last year, when things were, openly criminal. I think, like the criminality is like naked and ugly. I was waiting for something from this man. I want him to address it, and he froze. He could not write about it. He wrote about fashion. He wrote about Project Runway. I'm thinking, during capitalism darkest moment, he wrote about its most frivolous manifestation. You know what I'm saying? Because who cares about fashion? You know what I'm saying? Because people used to wear the same thing. You know what I'm saying? Whatever, right? But now it's like. So anyway, so I'm not knocking him so much as I was a little surprised that he couldn't come up with some kind of critique or criticism of what was happening. You know what I'm saying? So I asked him, and he froze in person too, and I think he lost so much money. It pained him. So what I'm trying to say is that for a writer of such stature, I think he dropped the ball. He dropped the ball. So I'm just hoping that Well, I'm just saying, the class I've been teaching, and I'm challenging myself to, and you can get silly because, things that seems topical and so urgent now might seem a little stupid 10 years later. You know what I'm saying? You don't know. You really don't know. But you mentioned the German artists and writers between the two world wars, and I think they rose to the challenge. The visual artists, Max Beckmann, Otto Dix, I think, tremendous, because they capture the madness of the time,
I guess ultimately what I'm asking is, do you feel like your work and your poetry and your stories alienate the audience, or are you trying to do something different with this visceral imagery that you incorporate? And I know you're talking about how you're drawn to these, like, I guess, gruesome images of human nature, and do you think that they're alienating in your work, or do you think people should be drawn to them?
I don't think I'm alienated. I think I'm trying very hard to engage people. Seriously. That's the last thing I want to do, is to repulse you, So, anything else? Yes.
So, do you think that because of your mission to bring out the darker side of life, that there is no place for escapist literature or fluff, call it, I don't know, or do you think you can learn things from that too?
Well, I watch the Phillies, right? You know what I'm saying? Who cares? But, I allow myself that, right? So, it's not like I'm, speaking of the Phillies, okay, my wife works at the mall, right? She works at another table. She makes $6 an hour, She loves the Phillies, you know what I'm saying? That's her escape, you know what I'm saying? When she gets home from work, she wants to watch something stupid, and she gets it. So, I understand that. I'm not, it's like we need, look, like, false seriousness is also very annoying, you know what I'm saying? It's suffocating, you know what I'm saying? I'm not about that. Okay, the thing about, having my country of birth, Vietnam, is so dogmatic, you know what I'm saying? The government wants to dictate what you allowed to write about, what you can't. They used to be more vehement that way. They ease up a little bit. And I think the way to resist that is sometimes is to be goofy, to be stupid. It's okay. You know what I'm saying? It's okay to be almost nihilist. Okay? But I think in this culture, goofiness and humor has been appropriated. You know what I'm saying? It's their way to deflect attention away. You know what I'm saying? Americans can laugh about anything. You know what I'm saying? Seriously. Think of all the names, band names about Vietnam War, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know, Napalm Sunday or, whatever, you know what I'm saying? Whatever. Anything that can happen. I'm sure there's a band named Abu Ghraib somewhere. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying? Like, our sense of humor is such that it's different. You know what I'm saying? I'm all for humor. I'm all for nonsense even. Okay? Because that's part of the freedom of the mind. Okay? But there's something about this culture which is the media has figured out a way to trivialize everything. So, you know what I'm saying? So you can have the worst scandal tonight, something outrageous, unbelievable, and it's going to be a big joke tomorrow, and it's soon forgotten. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, yes and no. Yes and no. Okay. Anything else? Yes.
It seems like as like unused to people hearing some of the things that you've been talking about, and as hard as it is to get people to even kind of digest sort of reality, it seems like there's a big leap that is very interesting, which is actually drawing like conclusions and solutions to a lot of these sort of the problems that you're talking about in America. And I feel like artists, and I can think of other examples too, people who are really engaged with the problem, they can't start to talk about actually what you would do to fix them. They can say that the problem is systemic, and they can say that it's institutional, and there's a lot of obvious conclusions you would make from that, but like they can't, or they don't actually talk about what.
What's the way out? You mean like?
Yeah. I think they know, or they have a sense of it, but I think they're afraid to even actually talk about what we would have to do.
Do you have any suggestions? No, seriously. I'm not being facetious.
It would sound a lot like socialism, because it would be moving against, we are such an individualist culture, I don't even know if I can think
I'm the last person to tell you anyone else what to do. I'm not. It's like, so that I don't have a system. But I think the tent city is an example of people having to work together because they have no choice. You know what I'm saying? Of course, there's Lorenzo, who's like the Pope there. You know what I'm saying? So there is a kind of hierarchy. It's not like, you know what I'm saying? But it's fairly loose. It's fairly loose. I mean, there's in Harper's the previous issue. They listed the rules of tent city from a photograph that I took. But very basic stuff, don't argue, don't fight, don't bring your tricks into this tent city, you know what I'm saying? Just very basic stuff, common sense. So, yeah. I think people will find a way, hopefully, to accommodate each other. Although getting back to the New York Times piece I wrote, I mentioned a guy who at all costs had managed to live in Philadelphia because he wants the benefits of living in the city, basically going to the bar down the street, But he bought 2 guns, He bought a bike because people would tail him as he got out from his front door. He didn't want people to walk after him, so you know what I'm saying. So this is he bought houses in the 80s, like basically shells that he fixed. So anyway, I paint this portrait of this man to show the prices he had to pay to be with other people. You see what I'm saying? His house has been broken into 3 times. 2 guns, a bike. You know what I'm saying? It's rough, but it's still worth it because he need. And I've been friends with him for 20-something years. So there's a price you pay. I'm not saying it's all gonna turn out well because this guy, like I don't know. I really don't know. I have chosen to live in the city for the same reason. I need that kind of mingling. You know what I'm saying? But I may get mugged tomorrow. I don't know. So I'm not saying it's like I'm not proposing a kind of utopia just because, we're going to work it out. No, I don't know. We can kill each other. I really don't know. So. Anyone? Okay.
Lynn is going to read his work at 5:30 in the library. 5:30 today in the library, the Henley Room, which is on the 2nd floor on the north side. So please come to that as well. And he has some books. His new book, Some Kind of Cheese Orgy, for sale. Is that right?
Yeah.
So if you'd like a copy, stick around and grab a copy from him. And on your way out, behind some chairs now, are some copies of Elephant Tree from last spring, the magazine that the English department puts out. Grab a copy, they're free, and this is a bit of an advance warning that by early December there'll be a deadline for submissions for next spring's issue. So start thinking about that, start looking at your work, your stories, your poems, and think about submitting to Elephant Tree. Grab a copy on your way out. Thanks very much.